At exactly 2:17 hours on a moonless Tuesday morning, a cluster of 8 FPV drones lifted silently from a tree line 14 kilometers northwest of Donetsk city, their brushless electric motors spinning at 18,400 revolutions per minute, a frequency so close to background insect noise that Russian acoustic sensors along the contact line registered nothing unusual. No radio frequency spikes, no GPS acquisition bursts, no thermal plume above the ambient 4 degrees Celsius ground temperature blanketing the sector. To every Russian electronic warfare station scanning the electromagnetic spectrum that night, 11 of them within a 20-kilometer radius, the sky was completely clean. It wasn't. The 8 drones were not acting alone. They were the visible tip of a 3-layer autonomous strike architecture, 18 months in conceptual development, and 6 weeks in specific operational preparation. Behind them, invisible and silent, a Ukrainian main intelligence directorate cell, the HUR, had spent those 6 weeks building a kill chain so precisely calibrated that every Russian action that night, every response, every adaptation had already been anticipated, modeled, and converted into a trigger for the next phase of the attack. The Russians were not walking into a trap. They were walking into a sequence, a pre-written operational script in which every Russian decision automatically activated the next Ukrainian action. Their target was not a tank column, not an ammunition depot, not a fuel train. Their target was something exponentially more valuable, a forward command post of the 1st Army Corps of the Donetsk People's Republic, operating under direct Russian Armed Forces command authority, responsible for coordinating fire support and defensive tasking across a 34-kilometer sector of the contact line. A structure that, if neutralized for even 20 minutes, would leave 3 Russian battalion tactical groups deaf, blind, and unable to coordinate a response to anything. The building was a 3-story administrative block on the eastern fringe of a residential district, a pre-war municipal records office. The Russians had converted the top floor into an operations room. Thermal blankets over the windows to suppress infrared signatures. Military-grade antenna arrays on the rooftop concealed beneath civilian-grade tarpaulin. 2 heavy diesel generators in the basement, humming at frequencies that overlapped with civilian heating equipment in the surrounding neighborhood. Civilian vehicles packed the courtyard as visual camouflage. From satellite passes during daylight hours, from any standard reconnaissance modality, it looked like nothing. But the HUR cell had mapped it. Not through a single intelligence breakthrough, through accumulation. 6 weeks of cross-referenced drone footage, 6 weeks of intercepted Motorola radio traffic analyzed by a signals intelligence team working rotating 8-hour shifts in a reinforced basement 12 kilometers behind the contact line. 37 individual pattern-of-life entries documenting the arrival and departure of a single Gaz Tiger command vehicle, identified by a distinctive dent in the rear left quarter panel, arriving every evening between 2100 and 2230 hours, staying approximately 4 hours, departing before dawn. Same route inbound, same route outbound, same vehicle. 6 consecutive weeks. Simultaneously, the HUR SIGINT cell had mapped the building's antenna emission profile, specifically the R187P1 AZART encrypted tactical radio system and the older R168 series, confirming sustained high-volume encrypted traffic every night between 2000 and 0300 hours, peaking between 2200 and midnight, consistent with evening command briefing cycles and fire mission coordination. The traffic had rhythm, and rhythm in the signals intelligence world is identity. The Russians had established a routine. Ukraine had built a weapon around it. What you are about to understand is not simply a drone strike story. It is the complete anatomy of modern decapitation warfare, the systematic, surgical dismantling of an enemy's command nervous system before his tactical units can react. A methodology Ukrainian forces have been refining through 28 months of the most intensive drone warfare in the history of armed conflict. And what unfolded in the 41 minutes following that first motor spinning up in the tree line would send a shockwave through Russian command doctrine that military analysts in Washington, London, Tel Aviv, and Beijing are still processing today. The strike package was divided into 3 distinct layers, each triggered by the preceding layer's execution, each time to exploit the window created by the previous phase. This was not improvisation. This was systems engineering applied to violence. Layer 1, the 8 FPV drones, was the kinetic entry point. Each airframe was a commercial-grade racing drone modified with a Ukrainian-manufactured contact fuse housing, 3D printed from PLA carbon fiber composite, containing a modified PG-7VL warhead stripped from RPG rounds and repacked for maximum fragmentation effect in enclosed spaces. The combined payload across 8 drones was not large by conventional artillery standards, roughly equivalent to a single 82mm mortar round per drone. But precision of delivery, simultaneity of impact, and specific targeting of unshielded electronic infrastructure made the payload selection exactly correct. You do not need to demolish a building to destroy the electronics inside it. You need overpressure. You need fragmentation at the right altitude. You need 6 warheads detonating within a 3.2-second window on the second floor of a 3-story structure. The flight path for all 8 drones had been pre-programmed using coordinates derived from a Starlink-connected GIS targeting system, cross-referenced against drone footage mapping the building's physical layout to sub-meter accuracy. The approach route was designed to fly nap of the Earth at altitudes between 4 and 8 meters, threading between tree lines and building rooftops to remain below the effective detection threshold of the Russian Repellent-1 anti-drone jamming system active in the sector. The Repellent-1 is a vehicle-mounted broadband electromagnetic suppression platform capable of simultaneously disrupting GPS navigation and severing radio control links across the 900 MHz, 2.4 GHz, and 5.8 GHz frequency bands. Within its effective range of 3.5 kilometers, no standard FPV drone relying on live operator control or GPS waypoint navigation can function. The Ukrainian operators had accounted for this weeks before the mission. The FPVs were not relying on live control links or active GPS acquisition for their terminal approach. The final 600 meters of each drone's flight path ran on preloaded inertial guidance, dead reckoning mode requiring no external signal reference, navigating solely by internal accelerometer data toward a fixed spatial coordinate set 40 meters from the building's eastern wall. If the Repellent-1 activated, if every GPS signal in the sector was suppressed, if every radio frequency was flooded with white noise, the drones would not veer off. They would continue on heading, blind and unstoppable. At 2:19 hours and 44 seconds, the Russian Repellent-1 station, 3.1 kilometers to the south, detected anomalous RF activity consistent with multi-unit drone motor signatures and activated a full-spectrum suppression sweep. The control uplinks to all 8 drones were severed within 0.3 seconds. In the tree line, the 2 Ukrainian FPV operators watching their goggle feeds saw their screens go to static simultaneously. They did not reach for override controls. They set their controllers down on the wooden crate between them and waited. Because the drones were already past the point where operator control mattered, inertial guidance had taken over at 400 meters from target as programmed. The Repellent-1 had activated too late, suppressing a control link that was no longer required. The drones kept flying. 6 of the 8 FPVs navigated their terminal approach without deviation. 2 drones clipped tree branches during the NOE phase due to a wind shift not captured in pre-mission atmospheric data, impacting short of the primary target. 1 detonating against the outer courtyard wall, 1 destroying a parked UAZ utility vehicle and killing 2 Russian military police in the courtyard. The remaining 6 struck the primary structure within a 3.2-second window, beginning at 02:20 hours and 07 seconds. 3 impacted the second floor window line in a tight 6-meter lateral spread, projecting fragmentation horizontally across the operations room interior. 2 struck the rooftop antenna cluster directly, the AZART relay array, and the secondary HF whip assembly, destroying both systems instantly. 1, partially deflected by a window frame, entered through a ground floor window and detonated inside the main stairwell, collapsing the staircase and sealing the primary vertical movement route between floors. The effects were total. The rooftop antenna array was physically destroyed. The R-187P1 AZART terminals on the operations floor were rendered non-functional by blast overpressure, exceeding the equipment's rated 5 pounds per square inch tolerance. 3 Russian officers in the operations room were killed instantly by fragmentation. 4 more were critically wounded. The senior officer present, believed to be a lieutenant colonel serving as the 1st Army Corps Deputy Chief of Staff for Operations, survived the initial blast but suffered traumatic brain injury and loss of consciousness. He would not issue a coherent order for the next 6 hours. The encrypted communications channel coordinating fire support and defensive tasking for 3 Russian battalion tactical groups across a 34-kilometer front went dark at 02:20 hours and 14 seconds. 7 seconds of terminal flight. 7 seconds that erased the command nervous system of an entire operational sector. But Layer 1 was never the killing blow. It was the key that unlocked the door. At 02:20 hours and 22 seconds, 8 seconds after the final FPV impact, the Russian Quick Reaction Force protocol activated. 2 Gaz Tiger light patrol vehicles pre-positioned 380 meters from the command post powered their engines and moved toward the building, headlights cutting through the rising dust cloud. Standard Russian procedure, QRF moves to secure the node, establish a perimeter, facilitate casualty evacuation, restore communication through backup equipment. Correct tactical response. Exactly what Ukrainian intelligence had predicted. Exactly what they had planned to exploit. Simultaneously, 1.1 kilometers to the northwest, a Russian R-330ZH Zhitel electronic warfare vehicle powered up its directional emitters, attempting to suppress Ukrainian satellite communication uplinks, including Starlink terminals, and deny real-time battle damage assessment to Ukrainian planners. The right instinct. Approximately 94 seconds too late. A Ukrainian Leleka 100 fixed-wing reconnaissance drone had been orbiting at 1,800 meters altitude in a pre-planned racetrack pattern 6.2 kilometers from the target since 0:42 hours 95 minutes before the strike commenced. Its gyroscopically stabilized EO/IR sensor had been recording continuously. Its data stream routed through an encrypted Starlink uplink to both the HUR cell and a dedicated fire control terminal at a Ukrainian artillery battalion 22 kilometers to the west. The Zhitel's suppression sweep activated at 02:20 hours and 51 seconds. By that point, the Leleka had already transmitted 37 seconds of high-resolution post-strike video, including clear imagery of both GAZ Tiger QRF vehicles moving from staging toward the burning building, to every relevant Ukrainian command node in the network. The target coordinates of both vehicles, fixed by the Leleka's optical track and converted to 8-digit grid references by fire control software, were transmitted to a battery of BM-21 GRAD multiple launch rocket systems, upgraded to 2 B-17-1 standard, positioned 22.3 kilometers to the west. The battery had been on 90-second readiness since 1:30 hours. Tubes elevated, rounds loaded, crews at stations, waiting for a fire mission that might or might not come, depending on whether Layer 1 achieved its objectives. It had achieved them completely. At 02:22 hours and 18 seconds, the battery commander received the encrypted fire mission data package, verified coordinates against the pre-planned target reference list, and authorized launch. 4 rockets fired in ripple mode at 0.5-second intervals. Time of flight to target, 47 seconds. The 12 Russian military personnel who had dismounted from the Gaz Tiger vehicles and were moving on foot toward the burning building had 47 seconds. No warning, no radar alert, no incoming artillery notification from a position the Zhitel's own sweep had just suppressed. No time to seek cover, no time to return to vehicles. No time to transmit a contact report. At 02:23 hours and 05 seconds, 4 rockets impacted in a 58-meter dispersion pattern. Both vehicles destroyed. 9 of 12 dismounted Russian personnel killed or critically wounded. The remaining 3, concussed, partially deafened, suffering acute stress responses, were incapable of providing a coherent situation report to any command element for the next 22 minutes. 22 minutes of total command blindness across a 34-kilometer front. In the 1st Army Corps headquarters, duty officers attempting to reach the forward command post received only static on every frequency. Backup channel attempts reached personnel who were dead, unconscious, or too disoriented to respond. The 3 BTGs in the sector, each commanding 600 to 800 personnel with attached armor, artillery, and air defense assets, received no tasking, no fire support coordination, no intelligence updates. Individual company commanders held their positions and waited for guidance that was not coming. Ukraine had engineered a 22-minute window of operational paralysis, and they had built Layer 3 specifically to exploit it. 41 kilometers to the northwest, a Ukrainian mechanized company, reinforced with 2 T-72 AMT main battle tanks fitted with Contact 5 explosive reactive armor, and crew-operated FPV drone launching rails on the turret bustle rack, plus a reconnaissance section operating 4 Shark long-range UAVs, had been staged in a prepared hide site since 2200 hours the previous evening. Engines cold-started every 90 minutes through the night, fuel and ammunition at 100%. Orders conditional on a single trigger, receipt of a specific alphanumeric code word via encrypted radio confirming suppression of the command node and neutralization of the QRF. At 02, 24 hours and 33 seconds, that code word was transmitted. The company began moving at 2:25 hours along a 2.4-kilometer axis, threading through the seam between 2 Russian defensive strongpoints, a gap that existed because the now-destroyed forward command post had been the coordinating authority responsible for monitoring and reinforcing it. With the command node gone, the QRF neutralized, and communications dark, that seam had no active oversight. It was a gap in the Russian line, defended in theory, unobserved in practice, for exactly as long as the blackout lasted. 2 Shark UAVs flew 800 meters ahead of the column at 400 meters altitude, providing real-time EO/IR coverage of the route. 3 Russian positions were identified along the axis, 2 two-man observation posts, and 1 PKM machine gun crew in a prepared firing position. Each was engaged by the lead T-72 AMT from Overwatch, while dismounted infantry flanked. No engagement lasted more than 90 seconds, none generated a coherent radio contact report because there was no functioning command element to receive one. At 02:38 hours, the Ukrainian lead element reached its exploitation objective, a road junction 2.1 kilometers inside the Russian defensive depth, serving as the primary resupply route for 2 of the 3 BTGs in the sector. They found and destroyed a fuel point comprising 4 5,000-liter fuel bladders and 2 KAMAZ 4310 logistics trucks loaded with 152mm artillery ammunition intended for the sector's 2 S-3 Akatsiya self-propelled howitzers. The destruction of that resupply represented an immediate reduction in Russian fire support capacity for the 48 hours following the strike, a secondary effect compounding the primary command disruption. At 02:41 hours, the withdrawal order was issued. The Ukrainian element reversed axis, broke contact with 2 Russian infantry elements beginning to respond, and moved back through the seam at maximum speed. By 02:58 hours, all Ukrainian elements had cleared the contact line and were moving toward pre-planned reconstitution positions. Total time from first drone motor activation to last Ukrainian vehicle crossing back through friendly lines, 41 minutes. The Russians did not mount an organized pursuit. By the time surviving officers in the sector established any improvised command link using personal mobile phones and civilian band radios, both immediately vulnerable to Ukrainian SIGINT collection, the mechanized element was already 6 kilometers behind the line of contact, dispersing into prepared hide positions. In the days following the strike, the strategic consequences of what Ukraine had executed became apparent, and they extended far beyond the physical destruction of a single command node. This was a live demonstration of targeting and strike methodology that invalidated core assumptions embedded in Russian command doctrine at every level. The first assumption invalidated: physical concealment equals operational security. Every standard Russian concealment technique had been employed at the command post: civilian building cover, thermal masking, antenna concealment, irregular vehicle timing. Every technique failed. Not because Ukrainian forces possessed a single breakthrough capability, but because they had developed the patience and analytical infrastructure to accumulate weeks of low-signature intelligence data and synthesize it into a targeting solution no single collection platform could have produced alone. Motorola Intercept alone did not find the building. Drone footage alone did not find the building. Antenna emission mapping alone did not find the building. All three together, cross-referenced over 6 weeks, found it. This is fusion intelligence targeting. The Russian military has no effective doctrinal response to it. The second assumption invalidated. Electronic warfare suppression provides terminal protection against drone attack. The Repellent 1 activation correctly identified the threat and correctly suppressed all relevant frequencies. In any previous iteration of drone warfare, Libya, Nagorno-Karabakh, the early Ukraine conflict, that suppression would have been decisive. The Ukrainian inertial terminal guidance solution rendered it irrelevant. The Russians suppressed a control link that was already no longer in use. This adaptation is now documented across Ukrainian drone operator networks and replicated across hundreds of subsequent strike missions. Every Russian EW operator in the theater understands that jamming activation no longer guarantees an inbound FPV will deviate. That psychological uncertainty, knowing suppression might not work, is itself a combat effect. The third assumption invalidated. QRF activation is a recovery action. Ukrainian planners had pre-plotted a secondary fire mission around the predicted QRF movement corridor during the 6-week preparation phase. The Leleka orbit was pre-positioned. The artillery battery was preloaded. The moment the QRF activated, it was already inside a fire mission, mathematically prepared for its arrival. The 12 Russian personnel who dismounted from those vehicles were following correct procedure. Correct procedure killed 9 of them. The battlefield being shaped in eastern Ukraine is not a preview of some hypothetical future conflict. It is the active development under live fire of warfare doctrine that will define the opening phase of every major conventional conflict for the next 3 decades. The kill chain demonstrated in those 41 minutes over Donetsk is a template: replicable, scalable, exportable. A technologically adaptive force systematically dismantling the command infrastructure of a larger, conventionally superior opponent. Without air superiority, without long-range precision missiles, without a single manned aircraft leaving the ground. The age of the protected command post is over. In a world of persistent multi-sensor ISR, AI-assisted signals analysis, and autonomous strike systems engineered to survive electronic warfare suppression, there is no location and no doctrine that can guarantee a command node survival once a patient targeting cell has decided to find it. The only variables are time and methodology. And Ukraine is compressing both with every iteration. Stay sharp, stay informed, and understand this. Somewhere, right now, a targeting cell is already weeks into its pattern of life analysis. The clock is already running.